Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Train News.
Where is Train News? Why is Train News today? Where is Train News? Where is Train News? Made Train News make Train News?
It was his fault,
Me?
Yeah, you. And we start today with an update to the 20th of May 2018 timetable change fiasco, which we discussed previously in a pair of bonus videos accompanying the last episode of Train News, one about the intended timetable, which was already a mess, and two about the industry's attempt to implement this new timetable, which was a catastrophic disaster on all fronts, or to put it more simply, train no work boo boo. As discussed previously, Northern's new timetable lasted for an impressive 2 weeks until it was replaced with an emergency timetable, acting about 165 services per day. This included an initial suspension of Lakes Line services entirely for 2 weeks, which was then inevitably extended by another 2 weeks, leaving the Lakes Line with no services, except for West Coast Railways, who stepped in to lend a loco hauled set and a train crew to provide a free shuttle from Windermere to Oxenholme. Not all heroes wear capes. Thameslink, meanwhile, went back and rewrote their service pattern, implementing their new timetable on the 17th of July, which has helped to stabilise services a bit. Northern, on the other hand, reinstated 75% of their cancelled services at the end of July, with the remaining services being reinstated on the 3rd of September. But have Northern services really gotten better? Let's ask the passengers. So, has the service gotten better?
Not at all.
No!
No.
No.
Wrong.
No!
No.
No.
No! God!
No!
No! No!
Engineering works on the Bolton route continue with a full week-long blockade at the end of August, during which time about a third of the services on my line, the Style line, was simply removed with no notice whatsoever. And for me this was indicative of a major problem that the new timetable for my line had. Basically, the major change on the Style line in May 2018 was the removal of the independent local stoppers, and now all the stations along the route are simply served by long-distance trains towards Liverpool and Blackpool. But that now means that engineering work further afield, which closes a line, will therefore result in those services simply disappearing from my line. Although while Liverpool Lime Street was closed, the stopping service was retained, so I don't know why this didn't happen this time. Heald Green, which is usually used to 3 trains per hour, was down to 2 trains per hour, and between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning there was 1. Before the May 2018 timetable change, between 8 and 9 o'clock we had 4 trains per hour. But because of the way the station callings are spread out between the various semi-fast services, stations like Gatley were left even worse off. Gatley's in a weird situation.
Gatley is in a bit of a weird situation. It is served in both directions by the hourly Liverpool stopping service. Then, southbound it is served by the hourly electric Blackpool service, and northbound it is served by the hourly diesel Preston service, which was removed during this week, leaving Gatley with 2 trains per hour southbound and only 1 train per hour northbound all day.
And not one person looked at that and thought, shouldn't we get the Blackpool service to call at Gatley northbound as well, just this week so that we can retain a 2 trains per hour frequency? But no, nobody's thinking about anything. They just do and they don't think, creating problems that could be easily solved with a little bit of initiative. Meanwhile, Northern's driver issues persist, particularly on Sundays, where rafts of cancellations are being announced in advance every single week. Meanwhile, the RMT are now striking on Northern every Saturday for 6 consecutive weeks. So basically, you can't travel by train at weekends now. It seems to me, and it really pains me to say this, that Arriva Rail North have given up trying to run a train service. The media, who flocked to rail reporting after the May 2018 timetable change, also seem to have moved on, despite no apparent improvement in the service. Apathy would be the worst depth for the UK rail network to have, don't you think? But there's hope, because someone somewhere at the Department for Transport finally saw sense and decided to postpone the December 2018 timetable change, for fear of this exact disaster happening all over again. Planned changes that have now been deferred as a result of this include Great Western's new timetable, which included 6 trains per hour between London and Bristol, TransPennine Express's new Liverpool to Scotland service, Northern's Chester to Leeds and Bradford to Manchester Airport services, and the next phase of the Thameslink programme timetable. Obviously, a lot of people were outraged at this news, in particular the renationalisation brigade, but come on, you can't really win here, because if you let the timetable change go ahead, then you'll have a disaster as bad as, if not worse than, the May 2018 timetable change, so be careful what you wish for. Whilst the DOO crisis continues on Northern, someone at Merseyrail finally came to their senses and have decided to make amends with the unions, guaranteeing a second member of staff on board all Merseyrail trains. Whether or not those members of staff will actually close the doors is yet to be decided. And whilst retrospectively installing obsolete technology to keep the unions happy is pretty ludicrous, it's definitely better than giving up on running weekend services entirely, so good on you, Merseyrail. Of course, one of the more permanent issues facing Northern and TransPennine Express services, as reported by both operators, is the capacity issues between Manchester Piccadilly and Manchester Oxford Road. It's almost as if somebody could have foreseen this. Let's have some good news. Transport for London have finally gotten around to placing their order for new rolling stock as part of the new Tube for London programme. This will see the replacement of stock on the Piccadilly and Bakerloo lines at first, and also the Central and Waterloo and City lines later on. The contract was awarded to Siemens, so their new factory at Goole will have some work to do. The initial order is for 94 trains, and the first will enter service in 2023. Hitachi and Bombardier are of course suing because they're sore losers. Electrification has finally reached Bromsgrove south of Birmingham, with the first electric services now running. Also, Kenilworth opened. It actually opened in April, I just don't think I ever got around to mentioning it. Also, since the last episode, London and North Eastern Railway, the operator of Last Resort, took over the East Coast franchise after Virgin Trains East Coast collapsed. By sheer serendipity, I happened to be in London on the day of the launch and was able to pop into King's Cross. So here from London King's Cross is our very not live correspondent, David Frankel.
So I'm at London King's Cross. Today is the 24th of June, and as of today, Virgin Trains East Coast has ceased to exist and is replaced with the semi-state-run London and North Eastern Railway.
Transport for the West Midlands have finally taken on a long-awaited rebranding, with the diamond logo first appearing on West Midlands Railway now being applied to buses and trams. The Midland Metro fleet is to be repainted into a new blue livery, and an order for new trams to serve future extensions is now being prepared. On the 21st of June 2018, the Rail Delivery Group, along with Jeff and Vicky from all the stations, decided to celebrate the longest day of the year by riding the longest train in the UK, the longest direct rail service, in journey time that is, from Aberdeen to Penzance, which takes approximately 13.5 hours. And that's 13.5 hours on a Voyager, so it feels like 27 hours. The pressure is now on Network Rail to respond to the government's decision to approve a third runway at Heathrow by improving rail capacity and access to Heathrow Airport. Work is ongoing to fund a new Western link, which would link Heathrow Terminal 5 with the Great Western Main Line, allowing for through services to Reading. Meanwhile, there are two different proposals to link Heathrow to the South Western network. The older ones are known as AirTrack and AirTrack Lite, and the new proposal is known as the Heathrow and Southern Railway. They're all fairly similar. They basically want to extend the line from Heathrow Terminal 5 to Staines, thus allowing for direct through services to Windsor, Guildford, etc. If that all sounds a little underwhelming to you, then fear not, because Expedition Engineering recently hit the headlines with a far more exciting proposal to link HS1 and HS2 via Heathrow and Gatwick airports. The new line would come with a large number of potential benefits, including allowing for international services from Manchester and Birmingham to Paris and Brussels, improving links between the north of England and the southeast beyond London, relieving capacity in London by redirecting many through passengers, opening up a massive new freight corridor, again avoiding London, and improving links between Heathrow and Gatwick airports, as well as Manchester and Birmingham airports, which are all along the line. Particularly in the case of Heathrow and Gatwick, this would essentially allow passengers to transfer using two different UK airports, with the possibility of running dedicated airside shuttles, thus making more efficient use of capacity at both airports. Of course, ambition is the inverse of viability, so although I think this project will be beneficial, I highly doubt it will find funding anytime soon. It would essentially be the UK equivalent of the LGV interconnection, which connects the various high-speed lines radiating out of Paris through Charles de Gaulle Airport in Marne-la-Vallée. This is yet another example of an oddity that has arisen with the provision of international services to the UK, where infrastructure owners seem to be more keen on opening new international routes than the train operators themselves. Earlier this year, Getlink, the new name for the company that operates the Channel Tunnel, as well as HS1 and SNCF, teamed up to provide dedicated paths for potential international services from London to Bordeaux, Geneva and Frankfurt. But the operators didn't bite. Eurostar is still struggling to introduce a full service from London to Amsterdam. Meanwhile, Deutsche Bahn recently reported that they had essentially abandoned plans to run London to Frankfurt services, an idea that they've been vaguely promising for about 8 years now. What a disappointment. Whilst infrastructure owners promoting direct services is great, it does not really much use if the operators don't step up. I wonder if Brexit uncertainty and unnecessarily restrictive border controls have something to do with it. Meanwhile, back in the UK, 3 new franchises are about to be launched: CrossCountry, East Midlands and Wales and Borders. The new CrossCountry franchise is set to begin in early 2020. Part of the DFT plan for the new franchise is to find more innovative ways of separating short and long distance travellers, noting that commuters, particularly around Birmingham, often cause long distance trains to fill up. A somewhat draconian solution would be by simply excluding short-distance travellers from cross-country services, either by removing calls entirely, advertising calls as set down or pick-up only, or simply requiring cross-country specific tickets on cross-country services. Better solutions would be lengthening trains, having dedicated short and long-distance coaches, and providing more local services alongside cross-country services. There's a lot of potential for West Midlands trains to do this. West Midlands are also eyeing up the possible transfer of stopping services from Birmingham to Leicester and Nottingham in-house. The next East Midlands franchise is set to begin in summer 2019. Currently in the race are Abellio, Arriva and Stagecoach. One of the most prominent features of the new franchise will be dedicated electric services to Corby, thus better segregating long and short distance services and giving Bedford its proper service back. A far more controversial decision has been the decision to split the Liverpool to Norwich service. A decision that has been rumoured for many years now. The western portion from Liverpool to Nottingham will be split off and given to either the Northern or Transpennine franchises, while East Midlands trains will then operate Sheffield to Norwich services. Many have decried the decision, and rightly so. East-west connections in this country are bad enough. I found that out for myself just a few months ago when I went from Manchester to Cambridge and back, and let me tell you, it was a pain. So the DFT ought to be introducing new direct services, not taking them away. Finally, the new Wales and Borders franchise is set to start next month, operated by Keolis Army. The new franchise plan involves yet another near-total rolling stock extension, with the Pacers, 150 Sprinters, 158s and most of the 153s all set to go. The MK2 sets will be replaced with MK4 sets, displaced from the East Coast. The company will also take on 170s and Viva Rail D trains. The company have also ordered 3 new train fleets. These are 77 new CAF Civity DMUs, 36 new Stadler Flirts, and 35 Stadler CityLink tram trains, which are set to operate on the Valley lines, which are set to transfer from Network Rail to direct Welsh Government control in September 2019. Along with new trains, the new franchise includes a number of new services, starting in December 2018 with a new direct hourly service from Liverpool to Chester via the refurbished Halton Curve. Note that Keolis Army Wales is not included in the list of franchises where the December 2018 timetable change has been cancelled. Through services to Shrewsbury and Llandudno will begin in 2022, so bit of a wait. And it's time now for Meanwhile in Scotland. Meanwhile in Scotland, as discussed previously, the introduction of new AT200s, the Class 3 85s, has been delayed because the windscreens were very poorly designed, so drivers were seeing duplicate signals at night. In order to cover for the delayed introduction of these trains, ScotRail briefly introduced 10 Class 365 units recently displaced from Great Northern, and they've nicknamed them the Happy Train. These were introduced on the Edinburgh to Glasgow via Falkirk route in June, whilst the 385s did finally enter service on this route in July. Speaking of recently completed electrification projects, the Goblin has now finally been electrified, hurrah! And the new Class 710 Adventurers are set to enter service in October. Jeff Marshall got to ride one a while back, so click this link here to see his video on that. Here, sorry, I meant here. Let's talk about new trains on delivery. The first Class 195 and 331 Civity units for Northern are slowly trickling into the UK. My friend Oliver, unbeknowingly, got a picture of one whilst driving along the motorway a couple of months ago. Here it is. And here is a picture of one of the new trains in Edge Hill Depot, courtesy of Jamie on Twitter. Meanwhile, the new Trans-Pennine Express fleet is slowly on its way. The company have now nicknamed their new trains the Nova 1s, Nova 2s and Nova 3s. The Nova 1s being the new AT300 Class 802s. The first unit has now arrived from Kasado in Japan and has been doing testing on the East Coast Main Line. The Nova 2 fleet is the Civity Express Class 397s, the first of which have begun testing at Velim. And the Nova 3s are the CAF loco hauled trains, many of which have now arrived in the UK and are currently undergoing testing. At the time of recording, I still haven't managed to catch a video of one of them, frustratingly enough, but they are doing regular testing and they are set to enter service later this year. Meanwhile, the first Class 717s for Great Northern services to Moorgate have arrived in the UK. And the first complete Stadler Flirt for Greater Anglia was spotted in Bern on its way to Berlin Inner Trans by Tizian Dahle on Twitter. The Flirts, as per Merseyrail's new fleet, are being constructed in various stages in various different points in Europe. The body shells are being constructed in Szolnok in Hungary. Meanwhile, Bombardier, Siemens and Alstom have unveiled 3 new high-speed train designs. Bombardier's is a new 125 mph bi-mode version of the Adventurer unit. Siemens, meanwhile, have unveiled a new version of the Velaro known as the Velaro Novo. And Alstom have produced the design for the new Avelia Horizon series, 100 of which have already been ordered by SNCF for the TGV. Although they will be branded as the TGV Nouveau, interestingly these will be the first trains to operate on TGV services that aren't actually TGV type trains. SNCF weren't actually the first company to order the Avelia type train, as an order already exists for Amtrak, known as the Avelia Liberty. Great Southern, Alliance's latest attempt to set up a new open access operator, has now been rejected by the Office of Rail and Road. The company would have used redundant Class 442s to provide a new express service from London Waterloo to Southampton. So much for privatisation encouraging competition, eh? And our final story, announced just a couple of days ago, is Crossrail has now been delayed. It's been delayed by about 9 months. Whilst this is not particularly surprising, you know, it's a UK rail infrastructure project, so of course it's late. Why are we only hearing about this now? It was set to launch in 3 months. Surely Crossrail knew for at least 2 or 3 months now that it was not going to open in December 2018, so why were they sitting on the news? Who knows? Anyway, for those of you who are new here, you might not know that at the end of every episode I give a little shout out to Modern Railways. Not because they pay me, sadly, but just because it's where I get a lot of my information from, as well as various news sites, Network Rail, and my own personal experiences of travelling around on trains. I am very busy over the next few months. It is my A-level year, so the next episode won't be until December. In the meantime, I will see you in the next episode of The David Frankel Show. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.